We're looking at sub-theme 1, which is partnerships for action to deliver sanitation and hygiene services. This sub-theme was looking at collaborations, how partnerships drive transformative change in sanitation and hygiene. So the key messages that came from this sub-theme are that there needs to be clear policy for an enabling environment that promotes private sector engagement, that also enables strong regulation. Partners felt that regulation assists to create that conducive environment for services to be delivered much more effectively and for private sector to be engaged as well as for the sector to attract funding.
We convened with AMCOW the civil society dialogue session, critical to the participation of civil society in events such as these. Some of the key messages and outcomes that came out: yes, investments in service delivery, which is the hardware, but it's also critical that we deliver as well on software. Who is going to bring voice? How do we coordinate? It is known that the water and sanitation sector requires a holistic approach and a sector-wide approach, which requires substantial resources. Number 2, on sector reforms. Civil society has been at the fore of supporting the different sector reforms in different countries and in different contexts. And it is critical that that space be opened and to allow civil society to embed some of its initiatives and programs within these reform processes in countries. On gender, we need a little bit more in terms of transformation. We need to move the needle. Furthermore, it is really critical that gender becomes a standalone subject or a standalone element in water and sanitation. Finally, financing. We have to work harder, be more creative, coming up with innovative approaches. But not only that, but also creating enabling environments and ensuring that we have governance, good governance systems and structures in place, and the right institutions to ensure that whatever comes in, no matter how small it is well utilized.
So the African Population and Health Research Center was largely responsible for Theme 5, which was looking at research. And one of the things that are coming up clearly is collecting data that is disaggregated and inclusive. Secondly, we are encouraging research and innovation for planning. So what that means is that we need to do planning that is evidence-based. Secondly, it's only 0.01% of patents that are being registered in Africa. If you only have 0.01% of patents being registered, it means that it almost communicates that there's no innovation happening in Africa at all. And lastly, the issue of capacity. There needs to be a lot of training, a lot of capacity building of the sector workers. I'm calling them sector workers because if we do not have enough capacity to handle the sector, then we need to find solutions by offering training and development so that we have a skilled workforce that can drive the sector.
Well, we've had some very, very interesting discussions for sub-theme 4, which is the inclusion, hygiene, and behavior change thematic. Over the last few days, we've heard so much about how it is important for government leadership and prioritization, as well as a high-level development plan that includes hygiene as a central part of health and economic progress. And of course, finally, the thing that we've heard in a number of sessions also is that we need long-term, sustained financing that is tracked. Now, Nelson, you were in the sessions as well. What did you hear?
Thanks. Indeed, many issues were discussed. In terms of research and knowledge creation, we heard about the need to encourage and support evidence-based approaches informed by formative research. In terms of inclusion, we also heard lots about that national plans and strategies for hygiene services and behavior change need to be inclusive at all levels, both at macro and micro levels. In terms of human resources, it was also emphasized that governments and development partners must invest in strengthening the sanitation and hygiene workforce in terms of skills, tools, attractiveness based on human resources assessment to inform capacity development planning.
So what we saw coming out from a lot of the discussions and sessions this week under Pillar 2 were firstly that this concept of safely managed sanitation needed to be demystified. And so governments felt a strong need to understand safely managed. What is this new service level and how does it translate into national context? So this was often a first step in the journeys that many countries were taking, was to really land this service level in their context. We were seeing that political will was a key driver. The trend towards on-site and non-sewered sanitation needed to be considered a public health benefit and a public service, not to be relegated to rural communities and the retail private sector. I think there is also an incredible amount of discussion on regulation and the growing role of regulators across the continent. The recognition of the regulatory framework also went toward being a foundation for effective partnerships and also for effective fundraising in the sector and being able to attract private sector investment. It was very important to have very clear rules in the sector. Data was brought up as a bottleneck to effective decision making and also as an impediment to effective investment decisions. Fragmentation in the sector was another issue that came across throughout, and this was not only at a policy level that we talked about fragmentation, it was an institutional issue that was affecting the service of delivery of service and financial services as well.
Alors, la Banque africaine de développement participe à cette 7e conférence axée sur l'assainissement et notamment sur cette thématique d'innovation et de partenariat pour améliorer la situation du secteur de l'assainissement en Afrique, à travers notamment le recours à des mécanismes de financement innovants et bien entendu une collaboration interinstitutionnelle et entre les différents acteurs impliqués dans le secteur avec l'objectif d'améliorer la situation de l'assainissement dans tout le continent. Et il y a eu cette idée de mettre en place un fonds spécifique dédié à l'assainissement urbain, s'appuyant surtout sur l'approche qu'on appelle Seawise, qui est une approche très participative, qui prend en compte l'ensemble des domaines de l'assainissement, que ce soit la gestion des excrétas, la gestion des eaux usées, la gestion des eaux pluviales et des déchets solides. Bien entendu, ça nécessite que dans les pays, que l'environnement soit revu de façon à pouvoir être favorable à l'attraction du secteur privé. Donc ça nécessite certainement l'adaptation des dispositions réglementaires, législatives, mais également institutionnelles, de façon à rendre ce marché-là accessible à l'ensemble de ces acteurs. Donc, en résumé, en termes de financement, il y a la mobilisation du financement, les financements climatiques. Et là, comme on l'a vu dans les différentes sessions, il y a nécessité de renforcer les capacités pour pouvoir présenter des requêtes qui puissent capter ces financements-là. Juste pour vous dire que l'assainissement de plus en plus va avoir, disons, un rôle ou bien un intérêt. Mais également, c'est un secteur où l'emploi peut être promu. Donc, je pense qu'il y a un bel avenir pour l'assainissement devant nous.